The United States has expanded its military footprint in West Asia as the war in Iran enters its second month.
In the deserts and mountains of Iran, buried deep beneath restricted military zones and shielded by decades of secrecy, something has triggered alarm within the Pentagon's intelligence apparatus. US analysts first flagged the threat years before current hostilities erupted. Now, as the rest of Iran's nuclear infrastructure is in the crosshairs, the fate of the global order hangs in the balance. This is bigger than Iran or the Middle East. This is about the future of the world and the current global order. Today, we'll unveil the story of how the Pentagon detected an unusual object beneath Iran's restricted zone and why it matters. Also, how will it affect the outcome of the current war? Iran's nuclear fissile material and official position. For decades, the Islamic Republic has insisted that its nuclear efforts are for civilian use only, generating electricity, advancing medical research, and supporting industrial applications, and that it is exercising rights guaranteed under the Non-Proliferation Treaty. As a signatory since the 1970s, Iran points to Article 4 of the NPT, which affirms that all parties have an inalienable right to peaceful nuclear technology, including uranium enrichment, so long as they comply with safeguards and do not pursue weapons. Yet this assertion has been met with intense skepticism and overt concern from Western governments and the UN watchdog, the International Atomic Energy Agency. The country's late supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is often cited as having issued a fatwa against the development and use of nuclear weapons. Still, analysts note that the purported fatwa's precise legal scope, particularly whether it binds the state to forego production or merely prohibits use, is contested, and that fatwas, by their nature, can shift or be reinterpreted over time. But now, Ali Khamenei is dead. His son has taken the scepter. The country faces a relentless onslaught from the Israeli and American forces. Will desperation force the new Ayatollah's hand? Well, let's look at the facts. Before the dramatic military strikes of June 2025, Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium was approaching levels that, in purely technical terms, could shorten the path to weapons-grade material. According to IAEA reporting and Western assessments, Tehran had roughly 440 kilograms of uranium enriched up to 60%, a level far above typical civilian reactor fuel and alarmingly close to weapons grade, which is around 90%. Experts estimate that a fraction of that amount, roughly 40 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, could be fashioned into a rudimentary nuclear device by those with access and intent. Critically, the IAEA has not verified the current status of that material because inspectors have been denied meaningful access to the key sites, Natanz, Fordow, and a new underground facility near Isfahan. Since the June 2025 conflict, the agency's Director General, Rafael Grossi, confirmed as recently as March 18th that the IAEA does not know whether the Isfahan facility is fully equipped with centrifuges, partially installed, or simply a shell awaiting installation, precisely because planned visits were cancelled due to escalating hostilities. But you see, these facilities are not ordinary. They are deep underground, not to evade detection only. That might have been a concern, but Iran's primary motivation was very different. The country was expecting this war for 40 years. Iran's underground nuclear facilities, and why they are underground. The desert around Natanz, in central Iran's Isfahan province, looks unchanged from space until you zoom in on the nuclear complex nestled there. Below the scrubland and scrubgrass, beneath layers of earth and reinforced concrete, lies one of the most sensitive secrets of the 21st century, the Natanz nuclear facility. Officially, the Shahid Ahmadi Roshan nuclear facility houses gas centrifuges, machines that spin uranium hexafluoride at hundreds of rotations per second to enrich uranium, thousands of them, in long halls buried some 40 meters under solid rock and concrete. Iran insists it built the plant deep underground for safety reasons and to protect against possible air attack or sabotage. This is a lesson they learned from past covert operations like Stuxnet that targeted above-ground equipment. The International Atomic Energy Agency once reported that Natanz was central to Tehran's enrichment activities, installing advanced centrifuge models and enriching uranium up to 60%. Meanwhile, the Fordow facility is hidden inside a mountain near the holy city of Qom, some 160 kilometers south of Tehran. This facility was first disclosed to the IAEA only after Western intelligence had already discovered it in 2009. Fordow's designers carved its corridors 80 to 90 meters into the mountain's spine, creating a cavern capable of housing roughly 3,000 centrifuges. Originally planned by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and later handed over to Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, the site was supposed to be converted to civilian research under the 2015 nuclear deal. Instead, by 2023, Iran had resumed enrichment there, producing uranium enriched up to 83.7%. Fordow's deep burial in a mountain makes it far harder for conventional munitions to reach the centrifuge halls. That was the reasoning Tehran gave, but it also fed global concern that the site could survive external military pressure even as tensions mounted. As a senior Israeli official acknowledged, in July 2025, Iran did not move its highly enriched uranium stockpile before US strikes on Fordow and other nuclear sites that June, indicating Tehran believed the subterranean protection offered by Fordow and Natanz would keep both the material and the means to enrich it intact. Even Natanz grew deeper with time. Satellite imagery and expert analysis over the past decade showed Iran building additional hardening and tunnel complexes adjacent to the site. Centrifuge assembly halls and storage bunkers were excavated deeper beneath the original facilities. The idea was to safeguard against the shockwaves from bunker-busting munitions. Another mystery in this subterranean network lies at Isfahan, where Iran had notified the IAEA in mid-2025 of a new underground enrichment facility. The visit planned by inspectors was cancelled due to the outbreak of conflict, leaving the IAEA uncertain whether this site, nestled near key conversion plants that prepare uranium for enrichment, was merely hollow rock or already fitted with centrifuges and material. In a landscape defined by decades of sanctions, negotiations, covert actions, and open conflict, these buried facilities represent both Tehran's assertion of sovereign technological advancement and the global community's deepest anxieties about where that advancement might lead. But you see, Iran learned over time, and it adapted. Lessons from the Iran-Iraq War and the US-Iraq invasion. The first big challenge for the nascent Islamic Revolution in Iran came in September 1980, when Iraq, under Saddam Hussein, steamrolled over the Iranian front lines, expecting a quick victory. Instead, the war would drag on for 8 years. For Iran, the early months were particularly revealing. Iraqi airstrikes and artillery barrages targeted oil refineries, military depots, and key urban centers with devastating efficiency. Cities like Khorramshahr and Abadan bore the brunt of sustained aerial bombardment, and it taught Iran that its immobile infrastructure was exceptionally vulnerable. Tehran's leaders quickly internalized that vulnerability. Military planners realized that any critical facility, whether for weapons production, fuel storage, or industrial capacity, had to be hardened or dispersed to survive a determined air campaign. The war's relentless attrition, with Iran absorbing more than 1 million casualties over 8 years, etched a strategic lesson into the nation's collective military doctrine. Survival depended on depth, concealment, and mobility. By the mid-1980s, Iran began adapting its approach to defense infrastructure. Missile depots and key command centers were either relocated to remote locations or moved underground. Engineers carved reinforced bunkers and tunnels into the mountainous terrain of Kermanshah and Zagros foothills, using granite and reinforced concrete to withstand direct hits. The experience of losing above-ground military assets to Iraqi air power would echo decades later in Iran's nuclear strategy. Fast forward to 2003, when the US invaded Iraq, Iran was again taking notes. This time, they learned about modern air campaigns and the limits of fixed military infrastructure. The coalition's air forces, with near-total air superiority, systematically dismantled Iraq's Scud missile program. Launch pads, storage sites, and related command centers were identified through satellite reconnaissance and quickly struck by precision munitions such as GBU-12 Paveway 2 and Tomahawk cruise missiles. Within weeks, most of Saddam Hussein's missile infrastructure was effectively neutralized. These lessons directly shaped Tehran's underground doctrine. Analysts studying Iran's nuclear and missile complexes note a clear pattern. Key facilities are embedded deep within mountains or under reinforced bunkers, often with multiple entrances and labyrinthine tunnels. And then came June 2025. This was the first time this setup was put to the test. The June 2025 war and US strikes on nuclear sites. In the pre-dawn hours of June 13, 2025, Israel launched what it called a preemptive air campaign deep into Iranian territory, hitting nuclear sites at Natanz, Fordow, and the Isfahan Nuclear Research Center, alongside multiple military and command targets. More than 200 Israeli aircraft dropped over 330 munitions in 5 waves, marking the first time Israel had struck such critical infrastructure on Iranian soil. Explosions echoed near Natanz as residential complexes housing senior military figures were hit and fires broke out. Officials said the operations were prompted by intelligence suggesting Iran was approaching a threshold where enough enriched uranium could fuel several weapons. Since Iran was, at the time, in the middle of negotiations with the USA, it was caught completely off guard. However, despite the decapitation of military leadership, the Iranian response that evening was swift and furious. Tehran launched ballistic and drone attacks toward Israel and US military assets in the region, plunging the region into what we now call the 12-day war. 9 days into this rapidly escalating confrontation, on June 22, 2025, the United States entered the fray with its own decisive blow. Under the operational name Operation Midnight Hammer, US forces executed a meticulously planned mission against 3 of Iran's most sensitive nuclear complexes, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. 24 Tomahawk cruise missiles and a fleet of stealth bombers struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear infrastructure. 7 Northrop B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, each capable of carrying the enormous GBU-57A/B massive ordnance penetrators, 30,000-pound deep penetration bombs, crossed thousands of miles from bases in the US, refueling mid-air and threading through hostile airspace to reach their targets. President Donald J. Trump, addressing the nation soon after, described the mission as very successful, asserting that strikes had obliterated Iran's nuclear program. But beneath the official rhetoric, intelligence assessments offered a more nuanced picture. Satellite imagery reviewed in the weeks following the operation showed that entrance structures, auxiliary buildings, and support facilities were badly damaged or collapsed at Natanz and Isfahan, and surface infrastructure at Fordow was heavily scarred by explosions. Craters and debris fields surrounded each site, yet the deepest underground sections, where centrifuges and enriched material were believed to be housed, appeared to remain largely intact, shielded by tens of meters of rock and reinforced concrete. By late June, it became clear that while Fordow's most fortified zones might be significantly set back, possibly delaying operations there for up to 2 years, Natanz and Isfahan could resume limited enrichment activities within months, depending on how quickly Iran could repair infrastructure and reinstall damaged equipment. These conclusions contrasted sharply with early triumphant public statements from US officials. Critically, the International Atomic Energy Agency noted that it could not confirm the full extent of impacts on Iran's enrichment capacity because inspectors had not been granted access to the bombed sites. Iran had not permitted comprehensive post-strike inspections, citing ongoing security concerns. Operation Midnight Hammer clearly missed the mark. This meant that the conflict would rekindle again, and soon. Iran understood this all too well. The ongoing 2026 conflict and the latest developments. Again, the attack came amid negotiations. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel unleashed coordinated airstrikes across Iran, declaring a major military campaign intended to degrade Tehran's nuclear and missile capacities and to counter what Washington termed an imminent threat. The supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was killed in his office alongside most of his family. Natanz and other strategic sites were pounded with bunker-busting ordnance, and Iranian cities felt the shockwaves of sustained bombardment. However, the response of a grieving Iran, which was dealing with the death of its Ayatollah, shattered assumptions about restraint. Within hours, Iran shifted from shock to execution. Ballistic missiles were launched in coordinated salvos toward Israeli territory, not randomly, but in calibrated waves designed to test and saturate layered air defenses like Arrow and David's Sling. One of the most telling strikes came near Dimona, home to Israel's sensitive nuclear infrastructure, in response to Israeli attacks on Natanz. The missile did not directly hit the reactor complex, but landed close enough to send a message. Analysts quickly framed it as a warning shot. At the same time, Iran expanded the battlefield outward. US military installations across the Gulf, particularly in Qatar, Kuwait, and parts of eastern Saudi Arabia, faced waves of drones and short-range ballistic missiles. Some were intercepted, others struck peripheral infrastructure, radar installations, fuel depots, and logistics hubs. The cost was not catastrophic in isolation, but cumulative damage began to mount, exposing the vulnerability of forward-deployed assets. This is where Iran's doctrine became visible in real time. Energy infrastructure quickly became another front. After Israeli strikes hit parts of Iran's South Pars gas field, Tehran retaliated by targeting energy shipping lanes and threatening choke points near the Strait of Hormuz. Fast attack craft, naval drones, and anti-ship missile batteries were deployed in layered formations. Oil tankers began rerouting, insurance premiums spiked, and global markets reacted within hours. Iran understood that it didn't need to destroy fleets. It only needed to inject uncertainty into global energy flow, turning geography into leverage. Back on land, Iran's retaliation extended into hybrid warfare. Cyber operations targeted regional infrastructure, including power grids and communications networks, while disinformation campaigns flooded social media with conflicting narratives about battlefield outcomes. What makes this response particularly difficult to counter is its elasticity. Iran does not escalate linearly. Instead, it opens new fronts rather than intensifying a single one. Through it all, the core aims of the US and Israel are consistent: degrade Iran's nuclear, missile, and drone capabilities to prevent any future existential threat. American and Israeli officials have repeatedly stated that dismantling Tehran's ability to enrich uranium, launch ballistic systems, and produce attack drones is central to their strategy. Despite these stated goals, much of Iran's enriched uranium remains buried deep underground and unverified by independent inspectors. Iran, for its part, continued to insist its nuclear program is peaceful and has denied any intention to build weapons, even as US demands for total cessation of enrichment featured prominently in the diplomatic agenda. Recently, President Donald Trump tweeted and spoke about productive talks and peace frameworks, including a 15-point peace proposal sent to Iran via intermediaries such as Pakistan, with terms ranging from nuclear program limitations to ceasefire mechanics. Trump even tweeted that negotiations had begun, though Tehran firmly denied any direct dialogue with Washington and continued to characterize US overtures as duplicity. Iran's official stance was that no substantive negotiations were underway without significant concessions. The Strait of Hormuz, a maritime choke point through which roughly 20% of the world's oil and LNG flows, remains blocked. The war's economic toll on the US and its regional partners has mounted rapidly. Independent assessments estimated that the first 12 days of the conflict cost the US government around $16.5 billion in direct expenditures, with munitions alone accounting for the bulk of those costs. Long-term estimates suggest that the total war bill could exceed several $100 billion once medical and reconstruction costs are factored in. On the battlefield, at least 13 US military personnel have been reported killed, while Iranian casualties and civilian deaths number in the thousands. Damage to US bases, radar, and defense installations in Kuwait, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia cost at the very least several $billion as Iranian missiles and drones targeted Allied infrastructure. Amid this chaos, some believe that President Trump might simply grab Iran's uranium. So, how feasible is this idea? Why? Extracting enriched uranium is impractical. From the beginning, the idea of physically extracting Iran's enriched uranium has always been far more fiction than a feasible strategy. Iran's nuclear infrastructure isn't a single warehouse with a locked gate. It's a sprawling network of sites buried deep under reinforced rock and concrete, designed precisely so no outside power could seize or neutralize its materials wholesale. That depth is part of the reason the US and Israel, in June 2025, could damage entrances and surface infrastructure but not reach, let alone remove, the enriched material itself. The same limitations apply today. Iran is a country spanning 1.65 million square kilometers of mountains, desert and urban zones with a population of nearly 90 million. Its strategic nuclear and military sites are deliberately dispersed. Natanz in central Iran's Isfahan province, Fordow inside a mountain near Qom, and other suspected facilities scattered across wide areas. This means that a ground campaign to seize fissile material would not be a quick raid, but a concerted, multi-front operation. Each target lies deep in territory watched by integrated air defenses, including SA-20 and SA-15 surface-to-air systems, and protected by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps alongside conventional forces. Any invading force would face not just tunnels, but hostile terrain and well-armed defenders. Strategically, the IRGC isn't an army designed for formal retreat. It's a resilient guerrilla-style force with layers of militia affiliates and local networks. In the event of an incursion aimed at capturing nuclear material, Tehran's defense doctrine would almost certainly unleash all available means to repel ground forces, including ballistic and cruise missiles targeting advancing columns, electronic warfare to blind surveillance, and the use of urban and mountainous terrain to bog down mechanized units. These are not hypothetical contingencies. They are consistent with Iran's wartime planning and decades of military posture emphasizing asymmetric defense. Even if a ground force somehow broke through the outer defenses and found the enriched uranium, another set of challenges would arise: radiation safety, logistics, and containment. Enriched uranium in gas form or sealed canisters requires specialized handling far beyond conventional military training. High-enriched uranium is closer to weapons grade than civilian grade, and acute radiation exposure without proper shielding can be lethal. Safe extraction would demand teams of nuclear engineers, radiation specialists, and containment equipment, all working under hostile conditions. The IAEA itself has stated unequivocally that it would not participate in military operations to remove nuclear material. Politically, the extraction scenario runs head-on into Iran's official stance and international law. Tehran continues to assert its enrichment activities are peaceful, aligned with energy sovereignty, and legitimate under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. This narrative, combined with the fact that most of the enriched uranium remains out of inspectors' reach, feeds Western skepticism, but also complicates diplomatic avenues. A military seizure, regardless of justification, would be viewed by many nations as a violation of sovereignty and could escalate the conflict far beyond its current bounds. Diplomacy has not been abandoned. Talks facilitated by regional actors like Pakistan, Turkey, and the Gulf states aim to cool tensions and incorporate nuclear limitations into broader ceasefire frameworks. For now, this appears to be the only way forward. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.